Digital 410 Productions proudly presents What's the Scuttlebutt Podcast with your host, Don Evans.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt Podcast, your favorite World War II based podcast. And I hope everybody's doing well, and I just splattered my mic, but that's all right. I hope everybody's doing well in the midst of the coronavirus outbreak 2020. If you're like we are here down in Florida, your schools have just been closed for undesired amount of time, I think 2-3 weeks for some of you. Now, we here in Southwest Florida, our schools are already in spring break. And so spring break technically ends this Friday. And then starting next week is the first week of the school cancellation. But if word stays true, as they've been saying, we're going to start our digital learning here shortly. Now, interestingly enough, my fiance is a school teacher and I have a 12-year-old. And my fiance is like, I don't know how to do this digital learning stuff. Some people are suggesting we make videos to upload to Google Classroom so that the young kids, because she teaches 4th grade, can see us, because obviously some of them are going to miss us. They don't have the best home life. We're kind of like the shining light in their eyes. And I explained to her, well, not only do we have a podcast studio, but we have 4 cameras in there. We broadcast live every Sunday or Monday on the Waterman and D-Train show. So I told her, dear, we have the equipment. We have the technology. We can make it work. And so that may be going on here at the Computer Studio before too long. But I hope all is well with you guys. I recently started, as we spoke last week, about a new segment on the show called History Through Photos. And last night I kind of went down a wormhole. As you guys know, last week I started the first segment of the History Through Photos, in which I shared with the history of a new canteen that I found. And we talked about that last week. Well, last night I wanted to do the second part of the series, which is another canteen, but we're going to go with the black enameled canteens. And the one that I have, interestingly enough, it's chipped at the bottom, but it does say US REP, and the 1942 is chipped off. But doing some research, I found out that that canteen was made by the Republic Stamping and Enamel Company. Now, here's the crazy part. The Republic Stamping and Enamel Company was based out of Canton, Ohio. And what little research I was able to find, there's literally like 5 pages on Google of any information about this company, but there's no information other than the fact that it existed in Canton, Ohio. There was an eBay sale of an old postcard of the plant, which I bought for $6. So I'll have that here shortly. And then there are references to the owners of the Republic Stamping and Enameling Company. That's a mouthful. And their contributions to the city of Canton, Ohio, in the development, how they helped funded the airport and all that. But I cannot find anything except for there was a very cool auction of a photo album that somebody took during the 40s of a day on the life working there. But I can't find any information exactly of the lifespan of the company, the employees, any information on their government contracts, what all they made. Did they just make the small run of porcelain canteens? Did they make other stuff? I did find an eBay auction of some aluminum or stainless steel cups that were used in the military during the Korean War, but I'm really not having any luck. So first and foremost, if any of you know anything whatsoever, because now I'm fascinated, because here's another canteen that I have. The first one, the company ended up moving in the 60s through the 80s to Chillicothe, Ohio. Once again, I'm from Ohio. My relatives are actually from Chillicothe. And now another canteen that I have was made in Canton, Ohio. But this place is literally nothing on the web. I actually reached out to the historical preservation group who preserve historical landmarks in Canton, Ohio, asking them if they knew anybody locally who knew anything about this company. And they replied with some information telling me to reach out to some local museums in Canton. So that's my next stop, because now I'm really curious and I want to provide as much information on this canteen for the website, because we're all about history here. So what I'll probably do is for the next edition of History Through Photos, I'm probably going to provide you guys with some photos about another piece of artifact that I have that's not a canteen. And then if I find some more information on the company, the Republic Stamping and Enameling, that's still a mouthful. The Republic Stamping and Enameling, I give up. You know what I mean. Company, I will present that to you guys on the website. And if you guys haven't been to the website, if you download this through Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, that's great. But be sure to check out the website, www.WTSPWorldWar2.com. And as always, if you know any vets or anyone alive during the 40s who may be interested in getting their history, their story out there, please send us an email at mailcall@WTSPWorldWar2.com or info@WTSPWorldWar2.com. Either one of those will get to us. Please send that information so we can try to get some more interviews with those who are there. And of course, if you know any authors, anybody who provides any sort of contribution to the preservation of the history of World War II, who may want to provide some content to the show, who know some history, who want to talk to our audience. If you yourself say, how do I get on that show? I really want to talk to the audience. I want to talk to Don and conversate. You too can do that by going to emailing us at info@WTSPWorldWar2.com, or you can simply send us a private message on our Facebook page. And you can just search on Facebook for the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast, and you can find us there. And while you're on the website, if you could please click that beautiful orange logo on the right-hand side that says Patreon. First tier is $1 a month. $12 a year, you can support the show. If you really like the show, $3.50 a month. And if you love the show, you can sign up for the Long Arms Deep Pocket plan at $7.50 a month. And after month 2, you get some free t-shirts, or a free t-shirt, to be honest. And right now, hopefully within the week, I will be rolling out some die-cut vinyl window stickers with the WTSP Lucky Strike logo. And if you are a Patreon member, you will get one for free. I've been demo testing all my new stickers from all the podcasts with the what we refer to as the OG 5, the original 5. Those are our longtime hardcore fans. But hey, even if you're new to the podcast, you can become a new old school long-term fan by signing up for Patreon and getting access to all of that free exclusive content, as well as exclusive videos and access to the exclusive Patreon podcast, What's in Your Head. So please go to WTSPWorldWar2.com, click on the Patreon link, sign up. Even if it's only $1, you get access to all the exclusive stuff, including the sticker, except for the t-shirt. The t-shirt is available for the $7.50 a month plan. And as always, this episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast has been brought to you by our friends at Computers. And right now is a busy time. I was thinking as I was driving around today, luckily here in Florida, we haven't had the declaration of importance. I can't think of the word right now off the top of my head. The one that says essential services, that's the one. And I was thinking, if we had the declaration of essential services, I would still be considered essential service, because I am one of those people that set up people's offices to allow their employees to work from home. So I've been super busy. Now I know what you're thinking, Don, working from home ain't big. You just got to set up a remote desktop on your Windows computer at work, and that's true. Absolutely 100% true. And especially if you have static IP. If you don't have static IP, yes, I know you're a smart guy. You do the DNS. But what I can tell you is this. If you do all that, even if you use a custom port number by changing your registry entries, hackers will still get into your computer using remote desktop. And it's one of the easiest ways to unsecure your network. So if you're working from home and you're not going to use a splash top or log me in, go to my PC, what have you, whether you think it's cost prohibitive or it's just you don't like it, if you're going to go the remote desktop route, I behoove you to contact ACT Computers at 239-283-1120 or through their Facebook page or through act-capecoral.com. Click on the Contact Us link and have them install Duo on your computer and or your server, whatever device you're allowing people to log in remotely. And that is two-form authentication. Kind of like when you log into your Gmail account for the first time from a new computer on your phone. If you're an Android user or if you have a Google app, it'll pop up and say, hey, is this you? And it'll give you a number and you hit yes, and it'll allow you to log in. If not, it won't. Same thing. We'll install Duo on your workstation or your server. When you go to log in with that insecure remote desktop, we'll also install Duo on your phone. And so when you make that connection, it'll pop up on your phone and say, is this you? You hit yes. If you don't hit yes, it does not allow the login. And more importantly, if that attempt is made multiple times, it'll lock out and no one can get into that device using remote desktop. And so it's the best way to secure your equipment that you're opening up for remote login. And going hand in hand with that, the remote login through remote desktop through unsecured connections is one of the way people's computers are getting hacked with ransomware. These guys will log in, will hack into your computer, and they'll use that access, and they will put ransomware in your computer and encrypt everything. And if you have local remote backups, that's fine, where it backs up to a local, whether it's an external hard drive, a network device, a computer, what have you. That's great, except for most of these are worms, and your devices you have hooked up to your computer or on your network, chances are that data will get encrypted. So it's super important to go with some online backup, whether it's through @computers or anybody else. It's so important right now. Back up your data online so that if you get encrypted, your data is more likely to be safe because it's backed up online. And these are both services that @computers offers. Give @computers a call at 239-283-1120. Say the word podcast, and they will hook you up with online backup for 7 cents a gig per month for the entire year. And they can also hook you up with the Duo 2-form authentication. It has a monthly fee for each user. It's very low. And obviously, if you need a plethora, yes, I said a plethora of users, they'll give you a bulk rate on that as well.
Dear friend, I received your card and was glad to hear from you. I guess you are busy getting ready for Christmas. I am working hard every day to get my piano paid for, and I'm taking music lessons, so you know I am not sitting around and not doing nothing. How's Florence? And tell her I think of her often. Merry Christmas to all, Myrtle.
A simple message delivered via what would be considered a text message of the time, a short and sweet postcard, full color view, artist rendition of the Republic Stamping and Enameling Company, Canton, Ohio. Postage date December 18th to one Miss Esther Barron of Massillon, Ohio. Sadly, the year on the postage stamp doesn't come out. But interestingly enough, there's a very curious stamp on here. It's the green George Washington 1-cent stamp. And after doing some quick research on this particular stamp, it turns out this stamp was actually issued between 1912 and 1914. Now this is a long way away, way before the Republic Stamping and Enameling Company would find themselves stamping out thousands of porcelain canteens in the early parts of the war, 1942. If you or any of your friends have any information on the Republic Stamping and Enameling Company of Canton, Ohio, please send us an email to info@WTSPWorldWar2.com because we'd love to complete the story about this company. I said next guest, our only guest. And joining us right now via the phones is a gentleman I just became aware of. We've been talking the last few days. A mutual friend of ours, Galen Wagner, who's been on the show a few times, has hooked us up. Mr. Darrell Price. Darrell, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Well, despite all the craziness that's going on, I made the logistical mistake of deciding I wanted to make hamburgers for dinner tonight. And I had everything but hamburger buns. And here in the house, certain people don't like to eat hamburgers on bread. I grew up poor, so I'm all about that. But certain people like buns, and there's no buns to be had in this town, so we had spaghetti. But we're all suffering, I guess.
Yeah. It's just been a logistics nightmare.
Well, first and foremost, where are you located? Everybody knows I'm down here in Southwest Florida. Where are you currently located?
I live in Sterlington, Louisiana, which is just north of Monroe, Louisiana.
And last night you were explaining to me you work for the fine people at the Coca-Cola Company, and right now in my @computers studio, I am staring across at a 1944 drink Coca-Cola bottle cooler. It's one of the key possessions in my Coca-Cola collection. I do have a reproduction 1945 ice chest out in my garage, but I'm a huge fan of Coca-Cola. And so when you said you worked for Coke last night, I was super excited. But you were explaining to me that often, as you guys do, because obviously Coke owns water bottle companies as well. You guys do more than just soda. But whenever there is a natural disaster or a time where bottled water is needed and needed drastically, obviously the Coca-Cola Company, they're not just going to drop off pallets of Coke and set up a cash register, say, okay, $1 bottle. They go ahead and bottle up stuff and they give it away, through destinations and all that. And you were explaining to me last night that for the last, a week or so, you guys have been just water.
Right. We are a water hub, disaster water hub for Louisiana. in the event of hurricanes, we ship it all down south, and we keep 80 to 85,000 cases of water. Half-liter water is the 24-pack Dasani that you see in stores. And we've shipped it all out, and we're waiting on water to reach us so we can redistribute it. But it went out basically in 2 days.
Well,
we shipped it out.
Well, you said something interesting. Maybe most people don't realize. You said you're waiting on water to get to you. Do you guys not just hook up to the city water line? Is it brought in through trucks?
No. The water, Dasani water, is bottled just like a Coke is. It goes through the osmosis process, so it's purified water. It's not spring water or anything. So it's purified water. So there's a bottling plant that runs they have a water line just to run Dasani. So there's more of a process to it, and we have the Smart Water. If you're familiar with that, Smart Water product,
sure,
and Vitamin Water by Glass, that's our product as well. But our main line is the Dasani. That's the Coca-Cola brand. So that's the one that we push the most. And we have an out-of-state source for that water, and they source the whole state of Louisiana. So it's kind of hard for them to keep up right now. But we're catching back up. Slowly but surely, we're catching up.
And so when you're not working and driving for the Coca-Cola company, what do you do in your spare time? I understand you're a living historian like most of us here, listening to the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast. Let's give our audience a little background about you and how you got interested in living history.
Well, I've been reenacting since 1995.
Wow.
And I started in the Civil War, and I rode with a great unit from Texas, the 8th Texas Mounted Cavalry, Terry's Texas Rangers. We had 3 companies in Texas, a lot of mounted guys. They were really good guys. And then from there, I progressed to World War II, where we reenacted the 82nd Airborne 505th Regiment.
What years was that?
That was 2002 through 2015.
So right around the time everybody was doing 101st, you guys were sticking true and doing the 82nd Airborne, representing that side of the jump stick.
Well, that's right. Everywhere you went, you saw there were a lot of 506 reenactors because of Band of Brothers and Saving Private Ryan, and we had some local vets. They were here that were 82nd Airborne vets, and they were always, how come nobody represents us, because we were there, earlier, and we were, the whole pride thing. So we wanted to do something for them. And every time period we reenacted with World War II or Vietnam, we do it with the vets. We want them included into it as much as possible to act as instructors. Because anytime you're sitting around some of these guys, they've always got a story to tell. And, those stories are they're for us to retell somewhere else, So if you don't pay attention, you're missing a big history lesson.
Well, not only that, if you're new to this hobby or you're wanting to expand from your group you're currently with, and you want to get involved in doing history programs around your city or your state, a lot of times it's a lot easier to, I don't want to say convince, but to get the local parks or museums or local living history locations to agree to allow you to do an event if you're representing a group that either trained in the state or in that city or somewhere in the region. And not only that, but you're also more likely to find relatives of people who served in that, whether it's a company, a battalion, or what have you, from that local region. And I don't know, I think it tends to draw in more attention and more appreciation when you're doing an event if at all you can represent a local, a branch or a group that is heavily represented by your area, whether through vets or the family members of vets.
Right. It's a huge plus. When you some of the vets that I've worked with the Vietnam vets, and that currently that's my impression I'm doing now is the 1st Cav Division, the recon platoon of the 1st of the 9th. Made famous in Apocalypse Now, but the having them, they come in and work, they volunteer at museums and we volunteer, and you're meeting them. So they kind of like, we adopted them and they adopted us to do an impression of their unit. And it puts a more personal touch on it, and it does keep them involved, and it keeps them energetic and working in the museum. And you're right about the when you do get that kind of support from the local veterans, when they see that you appreciate what's going on and you're genuine about it, they do tend, it helps you out with the civic leaders, event hosts. We do some living history for Fort Polk, and the Army has been really, really good to us by allowing us to come on and stay on post. And that wouldn't be so if we didn't have a relationship with the vets that we do.
Well, not only that, but you're reinstilling in the minds of the vets that, hey, you guys haven't been forgotten. Not only have you not been forgotten, but we want to talk to you. We want you to come out. We want to sit down. We want you to tell us the mundane stuff that no one cares about. What was the proper way to tie your boots? The great detailed stuff that we living historians look for. How exactly did you guys roll your sleeves? Or did in fact you roll your sleeves? Is that something that Hollywood made up? And by having access, especially with Vietnam, those guys are getting older, but let's be honest, are a great deal younger than the World War II vets who are getting harder and harder to find. And so those resources are, almost gone, sadly, which is why it's even more important that, if people know any vets or anyone alive during that time who want to get their story out, whether it's through interviews with me or local groups in their area, if you know anybody who was around that time, please, if you want to reach out to me, info at WTSPWorldWar2.com, or find a living history group around you and get those stories out there. But it's just so important. And you and I were briefly talking last night as living historians, because our civilian counterparts, they kind of think we're just cosplayers or dopes or grown men who are trying to play Army. And that's getting a little easier to deal with now with the population and the overall acceptance, especially against the younger generations of cosplay. But when veterans or even active service personnel come up to you and thank you for what you're doing, thank you for keeping the memory of the military and what they do alive, and spreading that information, it just makes us feel more justified in what we're doing and the time and energy and let alone money we're spending to do it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a great feeling, when the vets, when they want to spend time with you, and that makes you feel good. It makes you feel like you're doing something right. It's taken in the right spirit. And that's what sometimes that's bad in the hobby because you got so many mindsets, people are interested in vehicles or guns or whatever, but, but as long as you keep the history, they are the history. There was a line from a book about the Civil War that says, if you want to know the history of the battle, consult the history book. I can only tell you what I saw.
Sure.
And that's what I want to know. There's that curiosity. How did you carry this or how did you carry that? And when, I've been blessed to have some great mentors in World War II and Vietnam, and, they'll tell you quick, they can spot, they know what's right and wrong, and they know what right from a general inspection of you. And when you have a veteran that does your impression that's living, it puts a bigger burden on you to try to get it right, I feel like.
Yeah, because otherwise you're almost not only are you not doing them justice, it's almost like an insult. Like, hey, I'm kind of interested in portraying what you did, but I'm not fully interested enough to get it right as much as my knowledge allows me to do, and I don't want to take the free time to do that knowledge. And I'll be honest with you, I would say probably, obviously 100% of the people I've interviewed on this podcast, but I'd say about 75 to 80% of the people I've interacted with in real life, thankfully, they are dedicated enough amateur historians that most of our free time or leisure reading is history based.
Right.
I don't own a single fiction book. Everything I read is all biography, because to me, that's one of the things that draws me to this is, one, my grandfather served in Europe. And I tell people I have an unexplainable, unquenchable thirst for all things World War II. But with that being said, sometimes I'll read the logistical stuff, the troop movements, the war, the battle histories and all that. But for me personally, I much would rather read either the biographical or autobiographical story of the people who were there and who actually, because to me, when you read it and you read these stories that are just so insane to actually try to sit there and think, how could I handle that? Or how would I, react in that situation? And then you say, wow, these guys really were there. To me, that's so much more addicting almost than reading a fictional story or a comic book or watching a fictional movie. If I have a choice of watching a fictional movie or a biographical based movie, even if they take some some artistic licensing, me personally, I'd much rather watch the historical based movie. And then usually I will go out on Google and try to find the stories of the people that they're portraying to see what happened to them after the timeline of said movie. And that's kind of all how I kind of got into all this, is I just, for some reason, that's what draws me in.
Oh, absolutely. I'm the same way. I'm studying photos, documentary, or picking up the phone and calling and asking these guys, what would you do about this? How did y'all do this? How did you? And there's your, there's everything you need to know. And it's really cool to see when some of the vets come to an event and they treat you like a new guy. Mm-hmm. Would have been in their time period, and you need to move this, don't wear that there, don't do this, you don't need that. They're treating you just like they would somebody back then, which, like, you going back to what you said earlier, that they have a respect for what you're doing and an appreciation for what you're doing, and just try to get it right as best you can. There's a lot of things we can't get right because we don't have access to it, but when you do the best you can, they do appreciate it.
Yeah, it's weird, too, because sometimes I sit back and I have a moment of clarity almost. I'm thinking, why am I so fixated on who made this canteen? And the reason I bring that up is before I brought you on, I was introing the show, and I was talking to the audience about a new segment we've done on the website called History Through Photos. Yes, I know it's ironic. Most history is done through photo. But since we're an audio-based medium, for us it's something different. And last week I did a story on a canteen that I picked up from the early 40s, had a weird Bakelite cap, turned out the company who manufactured it moved to Chillicothe, Ohio, which is where my aunt and uncle were school teachers for all this time. And it turns out some of the people who worked there went to church with them. So that was cool. And then last week, because I'm a PTO guy and I have a black enamel canteen here, I thought, well, for week 2, we're going to do it on this enamel canteen. We'll just kind of do a canteen series before we move on. And it on the bottom, it says 1942, U.S. I think it says... The initials are REP for Republic. It's the actual Republic Stamping and Enameling Company. I keep getting that wrong. The Republic Stamping and Enameling Company. So I thought I could just do a quick Google search on that company, find 4 paragraphs to copy, paste, edit, and put up on my website. Would you believe there's like 5 pages of content on Google about this company, and none of it is about the company? It's just about their the effects they had on the city of Canton, and once again in my home state of Ohio. And I even reached out. So like now I'm like obsessed. I want to know why there's no information about the Republic Stamping and Enameling Company other than a postcard I found of the warehouse that I bought on eBay for $6 last night. Stupid stuff like that. It's like, just because it has to do with history in World War II, now I'm fixated on this company and want to know why there's no information out there on the internet.
Right.
And I can't explain to people why that happens. It's the bug that bites us all.
Oh yes. Fortunately, I working for Coca-Cola, we have a huge history with the military. Mm-hmm. World War II is a huge history where Coca-Cola disassembled production lines and shipped them so that a soldier could have a Coke for a nickel no matter where he was at. That's amazing. And with the Coke products, and you see people in Vietnam, World War II, Korea, a lot of vets, when I tell them I work for Coca-Cola, they go, in World War II, that was the first thing they give me when I got off the boat in Europe was a Coke.
Maybe I'll reach out to you after the podcast and see if maybe you can find me the channel. A few episodes back, maybe a year ago, I actually found the archivist for the John Deere Company. And I did an interview with him, and we talked about John Deere's war contributions. So maybe you could find through the channels get me in touch with the Coca-Cola archivist, and I can have them on, and we can talk a lot of the Coca-Cola war contributions in a later episode. And so that would be awesome, because you're absolutely right. Not only did they do that, but their advertising. There's a lot of World War II based Coca-Cola advertising out there in old Life magazines and things like that.
Oh, for sure. If you're ever in Atlanta, check out the World of Coca-Cola Museum in downtown Atlanta. They have a huge display about World War II.
The last time I drove through, because I have family in Kentucky and Ohio, and Atlanta's, I literally either drive through it or around it. And last time I actually was planning on stopping and running through there, but I was on such a tight schedule that I had to put it off for future. But yeah, that would be definitely on my bucket list. Let me ask you this. You said you started back in 1995, and I'm sure reenacting is just like anything else. It comes in ebbs and flows. And right now, especially down here in Florida, as we spoke in the past on this podcast, we're kind of suffering through some residual impact of some social happenings, to the point that now on any Florida state-owned parks, we can no longer do weapons demos with any firearm that uses brass cartridges. So basically, the only people who do weapons demos are your Civil War, your Revolutionary Warrior, and your French American and your Spanish War guys. All the World War I, Vietnam, World War II guys, we can no longer do weapons demos with our firearms. Why? I don't have an official explanation, but and so some people feel like the hobby, especially down here in Florida, is hurting a little bit, and some people are even concerned that it's dying out. As someone who's been in this hobby as long as you have you seen things like this in the past? Is it ups and downs? Is it kind of something 10-year courses? Where do you think the hobby is now, and have you seen this in the past?
Well, I think, social media has changed the hobby to the point where everything is covered, sometimes too much, and the internet is full of negativity.
Ain't that the truth? And, if we had a proxy server that got rid of all the negative content on the internet, you could surf every web page in 2 days.
Oh, probably so. There's been so many changes in the hobby and the hobbyists. What people look for, and there's a big impasse there. We did a kind of a survey, and we're asking people, when you say the word authentic for an event, what exactly do you mean? Well, everybody's talking about, this little aspect or this little aspect, but every person that hosts an event, their comments were, well, I try to put together a good scenario. I try to do this. Where you have one side worried about camp life and the other side worried about, I'm trying to make a scenario that's realistic. So, the two sides aren't working together, so to speak, and it's just until we used to, you had larger organizations in Civil War that hosted events.
Mm-hmm.
So you had an umbrella organization that was responsible for 1,000 people. The biggest event I've ever been to was a Civil War event. And this was my fourth event I ever went to. And this was the 135th of Shiloh. It was 12,900 reenactors.
Wow.
And where a local event was 1,000 people.
Sure.
Well, now it's hard to get 100.
It's hard to get 50. Let's be honest.
Yes, that's true. 50 is a big number. But one of the things that I see that's changed is I did the Terry's Texas Rangers, and that was it. And everything in the guidelines of Terry's Rangers. That was my only unit. Same thing with D Company, and the same thing with Apache Troops in the 1st to the 9th. I concentrate on one impression. But now you've got lots of people who maybe you and I do World War II together for 2 events a year, but you do Indian Wars with somebody else, and this other guy does, other events and other time periods where people are doing multiple time periods because you just don't, you don't have all the annual events like you used to have. So to be in the hobby, and that's big over here in Louisiana, Texas, because everybody does a lot of different impressions.
Yeah, because it's almost at the point, if you only do, 82nd Airborne, this regiment, this platoon, you may be, only doing 2 events a year. Whereas if you want to do more events, okay, well, now I got to put a Marine Corps impression so I can go to this event. Now I got to put an Army impression together so I can go, do a D-Day landing up in Ohio. And so it's almost like, because how few and far between the events are getting, unless you're a multi-state traveler, if you don't have multiple impressions, you're going to minimize the amount of events. And that's how I got into doing the first ID impression. Is my first impression, as my audience knows, was Marine Corps. But back when I started 6 years ago, we didn't have the event in Alabama, and we didn't, it was a year and a half before I did my first Marine Corps tactical that Mike Blowski put together. And so I found myself, doing living history events, which was fine, but I was the only Marine Corps guy there. So I would set up my display in my tent. I was new to the hobby, so I really didn't know the ways of the world, but luckily I found a nice guy who ran a first ID group, and I would tag along with them and set my camp up next to them. And, John finally said, hey, why don't you slowly start putting an Army impression together so you can do more events with us, and you can go out and participate in reenactments, because at the time there were no Marine Corps reenactments. And so I was just doing weapons demos and what usually would happen is, because John had a Winchester trench gun, and when we're doing weapons demo, I would always do the Winchester because it was used more in the Pacific than it was in European theater. So why not have the one Marine who's at this event doing a Marine Corps impression, have him demo the trench gun while you have all the first ID guys do the M1 Garens and on down the line. And so in order to, like you say, do more events, I started doing a first ID impression as well.
Right. And that's, that's how we've grown our units is, you pick up a guy here and there, and you end up, well, I know twice a year I get this guy for an event where I'd love to have him for 10 events, but I know he goes and does other stuff. And I have several guys that do that. I don't have a problem with that, but sometimes it just, people don't have the money. We went through a recession for years where there's just, and that hurt reenactments too, because, the luxury items have to go. And going to an event out of state or out of town, it's going to cost you money. And there's a lot of little things like that, the logistics of it. And then, unfortunately, politics gets into everything. Yep. So, and that's going to, that's ego versus ego, and it messes everything up. So, but events have changed, with the way, and we used to have in World War II, we had a World War II tactical, and that was it. You just come as your impression, and it was just a tactical. And then, I think sometimes at some point, some events tried to micromanage it down too much. Now, I'm all for authenticity. I want it to be as authentic as possible, but you got to be realistic with it too. A lot of people don't want to go out and buy an impression for one event and never get to use it again. Yeah. And so it's either way you go, it can be harmful or it can be constructive either way. But
well, and that's the problem. Especially you were talking about the social media's impact on the hobby. I don't want to say a lot, but especially with the younger cats, fewer and fewer people are interested in offering constructive criticism, taking a guy to the side at an event and explaining some things that could take improvement in a nice, delicate way. They're more interested in snapping a picture of the guy without his knowledge and then going on Facebook's FarbFest, posting up there and talking crap about him for 5 paragraphs. And then next time he sees him at an event, assuming that person didn't see him talking crap about him on Facebook, sit there and act like they're good buddies so he can get some more content for FarbFest later on down the road, which is, that in itself is just kind of discouraging.
Oh, that is discouraging. I hate that part of it. And, I've hosted events since 2004 or 2005. And, that I feel like this, as an event host, and I wish people could meet me halfway and think about this. Why am I not controlling everybody, this way? Well, it shouldn't be for me to control. If you've got a unit, why aren't you controlling that before you come to the event? Because at the event, that's the last time
You're already there.
I mean, you can't fix it then. Right. You can't fix it then.
Do you think some groups have a issue with the structure of leadership, simply because, not that they don't have people willing to step up to play the leadership role? It's obviously, none of us, even those who have served, and some people are active duty, but even still in the environment in which we participate in these events, obviously rank has no true rank to it, but it does have a purpose for logistical ways, kind of like you're saying. You have the guy who's spent a year and a half getting the insurance together, finding the property, getting all the minutia that it takes to put together an event, whether it's a living history event or a concert. There's so much stuff that has to be done in the background that each group who's coming, they need to have a structure of leadership so that they can get their guys on the, wherever their role is at the event, whether it's out on the battle or setting up living history displays. They need to be able to micromanage their groups to make everything run proficiently. And I almost wonder if maybe it's because of the way that everybody feels nowadays, that I ain't listening to no one, I'm all about me, that it's harder to get that structure of leadership going, because when you try to explain to somebody, hey, I need you to do this, do that, they think it's a personal assault on their character, and how dare you think you're better than me? No, it has nothing to do with that. I'm just trying to make this event move along. We have places to be. We have timelines, literally. The event organizer told on the radio, hey, at 1 o'clock this is going to happen, at 1:30, and so they have a structure for the public so they know when things are going on. And in order to get that timeline moving, the organizer needs the help of everybody. And so if your group has a structure of hierarchy, it's not because that person wants to be in charge and tell you what to do. It's they're trying to do their part to keep the event moving smoothly as a well-oiled machine, and not because they think they're better than you.
That would really help out the hobby greatly. If now I'm an event host and sponsor and coordinator at 2 different events. And now, one thing that I look for is I want a unit to come in. I want a squad that has a squad leader and already has a chain of command, because I want to deal with that one guy. I don't want to have to deal with 8 individuals.
Exactly, and it's easier for you. Okay, you're trying to find, okay, I need a group to do a weapons demo at noon. You want to walk into a bivouac, see a guy with, a lieutenant pin on, and say, hey, lieutenant, do you have anybody? You don't want to sit there and say, well, no one has stripes, everybody's privates or everybody's sergeants, and who do I ask? You just, for the sake of productivity once again and streamlining all this stuff, you need to look around, see who has the highest rank, and assume that for the sake of this weekend, that rank means something among that group, so that's the guy you go to when you need something done, and not have 4 people, no, you need to find Bob. Where's Bob? That hierarchy just helps so much.
Oh, it does. This is interesting that you bring this up, because over the past year, I have a friend that is a lieutenant colonel at Fort Polk, and Colonel Mark Leslie. And Mark Leslie has been an influence on me, teaching me this, teaching me that. And he does an after action with me on Tigerland, which, I'll tell you more about.
Sure.
But one of the things that Colonel Leslie says is the biggest problem that I have as a coordinator and trying to put together a tactical plan is I have absolutely no way to truly assess my troops. Everybody operates at a different level.
Mm-hmm.
You've got guys that spent 20 years in the Army, down to a guy that just recently bought a rifle and doesn't even know how to operate it. But how to get these guys to function in a way to complete an objective, that's the key for the event coordinator. Now, event coordinators everywhere, they take a lot of heat for missions that don't get accomplished, or people being in the wrong place, wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
But how do I know if you know how to read them out?
Yeah.
How do I know if you know how to read a military grid? I mean, I have no way to realistically know. And that's what makes it difficult for making events work in a better way. And
well, not only that, but I would assume, I've only been doing this for 7 years, but I would assume you could probably attest to this because of your longevity in this hobby. Because we're kind of in a downslope right now, and the fact that lot of groups members, you'll have one group and these guys are all really good at showing up at events, but in real life they live 2, 3, 4, 5 hours away from each other. And so it's hard to get together once every 3 months to do training. Whereas if you all lived in the same town because the numbers were so big, hey, this weekend we're going to go out to the camp, we're going to go out to this property or show up here on Saturday. Let's do some, drills and all that. It's just so hard to do.
But yeah, it's very hard to do. I mean, we're in the same situation. I've got guys all the way from North Alabama to Texas.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and
thank God for them.
A weekend. Yeah. You can't pick a weekend to get everybody together. So, I mean, it's really hard to do. And, I'm not being critical of anybody because I'm go through it myself, but it's very hard to do. But so you got to have some guys within that unit that can help you out and not be a critic afterwards. I mean, they can, like you were saying, you got to have that strong NCO and the chain of command that can move you forward so that everybody's on the same sheet of music.
And it's kind of funny because I ran into someone I hadn't talked to in a while, and he was surprised. He's like, "Oh, you're a first lieutenant now?" And I think he was kind of put off because I've only been doing this for 6 years. But as you and I were saying before, when it comes to, at least in my perspective, the hierarchy of leadership, the rank sometimes doesn't exactly rely on a person's knowledge or the tenure of how long they've been doing it in the hobby. It may be that the person organizing the group or the event, has discovered that this person has, whether it's a residual effect from their career. For example, obviously I've been doing this podcast for 2 years and 3 months. Before this, I hosted the #1 afternoon show in Southwest Florida for 6.5 years. This show has been on the air, same group of guys, since the 90s. Part of my job as a radio producer is to get things done in real time that the two hosts can't do because they are stuck behind a microphone talking in live time, whether it's answering phones, booking guests. I remember Newtown shooting. I had to go out and get all the, the articles and all that. Anytime we put on a big concert, I had to, logistic, get rock bands interviews. And so because of my career, my job as a producer is to produce, be self-manageable, get things done, and be heavily relied upon. And so at a World War II event, yes, it's World War II in its history, but it's no different than a rock concert or any other sort of event. I understand logistics. I understand, someone asked me to do something. I don't micromanage or, I don't know how to do that. I process it and I figure out a way to get it done. And I think the people in the leadership and the groups that I hang out with saw that and realize, back to what you were saying, that if I'm not in camp and the organizer comes to my group and needs someone to be reliable, answer questions, and get stuff done without too many questions, Don's the perfect guy because that's what he does for a living, being a radio producer, and not to mention owning 2 businesses. He's the perfect guy. And so, yes, he may not be part of my group for as long as somebody else, and that other person may get hurt because he has a higher rank, but he gets that rank because he is reliable and he can get things done, not so much in a war type, but in an event thing. Because let's be honest, reenacting living history, it's a show, it's a production at different levels. Obviously, if you're up in Ohio on Lake Erie for the D-Day event with that many people, that's a huge production. Some of it's a smaller production, and you need to be able to rely on somebody in each group to get things done without a lot of hand-holding and micromanaging. And that's where your ranking really comes into play at.
Right, exactly. I mean, you get a lot of people that, they want to say, the hashtag not my officer movement, and,
not my monkey, not my circus.
Right, but there's a lot of people that they'll play along and they'll help you any way they can, which makes your job a whole lot easier. And the rank really, the higher up the chain you go, the less ammo you need to buy for an event because you're probably not going to be shooting.
Yeah, right.
And so I mean, you got to find people that are willing to step over that line, and that's. Some of the younger reenactors, I talk about that, is it's time for them to kind of step over that line and want to help and be on this side, the management side.
Sure.
And maybe it's not as much fun. It's not as much fun when you know where the ambush is. or you have an idea what time they're going to hit the camp, or things like that you keep from people, so that you get that full on effect when it happens. But we got to incorporate people in, and I think if everybody should try to help host an event one time, because you'll be more sympathetic to the poor guy who continues to do it, the glutton, so to speak. But you'll have more of a respect for him, I think. And I mean, I've been really lucky. I've got good people around me. They keep me out of trouble. That's all I can say. Is we've had some successful things, and it's a team effort, for sure. But you've got to have those people who are willing to play the game, and we just need more of them. And if you could put all that imagination together for one purpose, we'd have a great event.
Yeah, the irony that I always find, especially leading up to the event, if you're on the social media pages, you hear people, we need to be authentic and this and that, which is great. But then a lot of times those are the same people who don't want to park their car somewhere inconvenient so that we don't see it. It's like, great, we got this beautiful bivouac set up right next to Steve's F-150 because he don't want to park it down the street. Thanks, Steve. That's the stuff that drives me nuts. I really wish we can get the, the creature comforts part taken care of, but that's another complaint for another time. Now, interesting enough, speaking of social media, we lived in a cancel culture for a while. As far as you say things that offend people on the internet, you're going to lose your career. But now we're literally living in a cancel culture, which means the coronavirus is getting everything canceled, from Spartan races to hockey season, basketball season, and all that. And so we're going to go into this next segment with the caveat of, make sure you always check online with the latest updates on whatever event you're planning, because it could get canceled. But just because it's a small possibility for future events doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about future events and get the word out there so you guys can get them on your calendar and plan to go. And just keep in mind that there's always a small chance, especially if it's in May or June or July, that it could get canceled. But hopefully this whole nightmare and this whole thing we're all going through worldwide, it will be over by then. But just with that caveat, you have a couple events coming up. One of them is May 15th through the 18th in Mississippi. Why don't you tell the audience about that?
All right. The event is May 15th through 18th. It is called the Trail of Honor. You can check us out at trailofhonor.org, and we have a Facebook page. If you're a reenactor, it's a great event. It's a living history timeline. The difference is we have a half-mile trail cut through the woods, and each time period has its own station. And we start at French and Indian War, and we finish up I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Acts of Valor. That was about the Navy SEALs. The boat team from that movie is actually based in Mississippi, and that's how you end the trail, is they demonstrate their boats.
Now, is this
on a trailer, you can crawl in them.
Is this the first time you guys have put on this sort of timeline, or is this an annual event?
No, this is an annual event, and it's been going on since 2002.
I love the idea of the trail through the woods, because that's kind of the other no matter how much time, energy, and effort, and you can't blame the organizers, because property is property and layouts are layouts, but I love the idea that you guys have been able to, maybe not completely, I haven't seen the layout of the property, but you guys have used the woods as a partitioning, if you will, so that while you're standing in your Spanish-American War a bivouac, you're not seeing the Vietnam guys walking around loading their M1, their M16s and all that. So I really think it's a great idea and way to kind of partition up the groups by using the trees and the natural environment to put a border in between each group.
Oh yes, exactly. We have on the site, we have opposing breastworks for the Civil War with 6 artillery pieces. We have a Huey in the Vietnam area. We have a crashed Huey. This is only part of the event, let me tell you, because the World War I has trench lines, World War II has tunnels, and each the reenactors maintain each individual area of their own. When you come to the end of the trail past Vietnam, you come to the traveling wall. We have the Vietnam traveling wall there. Inside the building, you'll have Medal of Honor recipients. At most, we've had 5, and it varies from year to year by their available times. And but we have public battles for Vietnam, World War II, and Civil War. We have a special boat team, and we have, if you're a reenactor, you're going to get fed 3 times a day. You got a place to stay. You've got hot showers. You go to a VIP dinner with the Medal of Honor guys and all the VIP guys. You'll have guys from Vietnam, Korea. Ronald Rosser is a Korean War veteran, Medal of Honor recipient, very nice guy. He's an annual attendee. Jack Lucas, who's the youngest Medal of Honor recipient, I believe, Marine from Iwo Jima. Woody Williams attends when he's available. We've had Bruce Crandall. We've had Mike Thornton, Navy SEAL from Vietnam. We've had a lot of different personalities in and out there. We'll have Tuskegee Airmen, Navajo
Beautiful.
Code Talkers. Several museums will be set up out in front of the building. We'll have the Sky Soldiers out of Atlanta selling helicopter rides, and the Hueys and the Cobras. So there's a lot going on, and all this is absolutely free to the public and free to the reenactor that wants to come.
And I would assume if you're a lone reenactor from out of state and you join up with the Facebook page, that there are people, like if you're a Civil War guy, or a World War I guy, or a World War II guy, people kind of, feel you out, find out what your impression is, and and find a group to kind of fall you in with, so that when you go up there for the weekend and you're traveling from out of state, you'll have a group to fall in with and kind of get you hooked up with a line of contact.
Yes, indeed. I mean, you can contact me from Facebook, or I can give you my contact information through the podcast to post it. You can contact me, and then there's somebody over the early eras, and then we got somebody over the modern. We have people that you can get in contact with, or if you just by chance you contact this event is at a Harley Davidson dealership in Mississippi. Harley doesn't have anything it's not a sales promotion for the event, because the last day of the event is on a Monday. That's whenever the Vietnam veterans that ride from California to DC for the Rolling Thunder, that's when they come through Jackson and they stop for lunch. So it's a very, we have around 30,000 spectators a year, plus about 600 bikes come through on Monday. It's a great event. It's a one of a kind.
And roughly, how big is the property out there? How many acres do you think it is, roughly?
Ooh, man, that would be hard to say. Well, I mean, just in front of the building, we land all the air assets. So we'll have up to 5 helicopters landed in front of the building.
And then obviously the woods out back.
Right. And then we'll have an average of 150 to 200 reenactors on the trail, a staff of 120 people. So it's a huge site.
Now, obviously, planning for these sort of things happen years in advance, and you have your regulars who go annually, who's been there before. Is there a particular group or timeline of reenactors that you guys are scarce on this year, that the registration's low for? Is there a particular timeline that you're trying to find? Is there, are you guys short on World War I guys? Are you guys hurting on World War II guys? Obviously everybody's welcome, but is there a particular timeline that maybe someone has in their closet they haven't pulled out in a while that you could really use some help from?
I could really use some help in the early time periods of war, not French and Indian, but Rev War, War of 1812. And I'm really looking for some guys that do 1840s Mexican War and World War I, World War II, and Desert Storm. I mean, I'd love to find some Desert Storm guys.
I've slowly seen a couple of those guys around Florida popping up. I was going to talk about this earlier. Someone often asks me, well, in the reenacting community, how does people decide what their ideal specialty is? And obviously, one, it's whatever history bug bites you. But I think as a general rule of thumb, not that there's a rule, I think for a lot of people, it depends on, who they know. If they had a particular family member, a younger cat, their grandfather may have fought in Vietnam, so now he's interested in portraying Vietnam, or even a younger group, their uncle may have been in Desert Storm or, Iraqi freedom, and so they may have a draw towards that. And so as these wars are getting further away, you're starting to see Vietnam impressions popping up. You're starting to see early Desert Storm impressions popping up. And as time goes by, I think more and more of those impressions will start to develop as the people who are family members of that generation get older to where they can afford to assemble those impressions. And so I find it's always interesting each year to see what newer impressions and what newer timelines are starting to pop up, because those particular, interactions are getting further and further down the timeline.
Oh, I agree with you. I think, as time goes on, there's more research material available, and I mean, so people have an interest in it, but just don't know where to go get it right now. And, I know there's people out there that do these time periods, but they're hard to locate. And then if you locate them, they're always way out of your area of operation. And I found some really good guys in different time periods, but they would be hard to get there. And so, it goes back to what we were talking about previously. A lot of guys, it's just a one man or two man show that does an impression, and they do all great impressions. They're awesome from head to toe, but unfortunately I can't get them.
Yeah.
And a lot of them never hear about an event like this, so, I mean, it's like I say, it's a one of a kind. I've been going, I've missed 1 year since it started, and I've been the coordinator. This is my second year to be the coordinator over the whole trail. So it's a great job. I love it, and I mean, it's a great event, and it's worth it. It's worth everything you spend to get there. You're going to love it.
Once again, we're talking with Darrell Price, and he is a living historian and a employee of the Coca-Cola Company, which is fantastic. But please, once again, if any of our audience who are wanting to do some living history outside of World War II, or once again they are putting that type of impression together, if they want to get more information on this event, give the name of the websites, the Facebook pages out, and where are the best places to go to get more information on this event.
We are also looking World War II. We'd love to have you.
Sure.
Pacific or European. We're looking for every impression, and the more the better. So I'll give you my address. It's the post later, but it's dprice19a@gmail.com. That'll get straight to me.
Okay, and for the people wanting the Facebook page, what's the Facebook page again?
The Facebook page is the Trail of Honor.
.com? Oh, no, Trail of Honor. Just search that on Facebook.
.org.
Yep. So go to trailofhonor.org, trailofhonor.org, or search Trail of Honor in Facebook. And as always, we say this, if you guys are listening through Apple Podcast or iTunes or Spotify, Stitcher, Google Music, any of that stuff, anytime we have someone on the show, whether they're promoting an event, promoting a book, promoting a movie, whatever, we always have the pertinent links to the books, the websites, the events, what have you on the page. So whenever you see a new episode show up on your app, if you head over to WTSPWorldWar2.com, right on the homepage, there will be a page specifically for that episode, and there'll be photos of the people we're talking to, there'll be photos of events we're talking about, and there will be email contacts and links to the pertinent websites and Facebook pages. So obviously you don't need to pause, rewind this, and write that information down. We just like to get it out there for those of you with great photographic memory. For the rest of you, simply head over to d-410.com is the mother page. Sorry, I got 4 podcasts. You can go to d-410.com. All the episodes are posted there as well, but go to WTSPWorldWar2.com. That's WTSPWWII.com, and right on the homepage you'll see the logo for this episode, and all the information will be right there. And hopefully we can get some people out. One of the other things when it comes to living history, especially with the northern events, is because of the winter time and the small window of good quality weather, a lot of times events happen on the same weekend, and so you almost have to cherry pick which ones you're going to. And sometimes there's events that you were on the fence about going to, but they're just way too far for you to physically get to. And so it's nice to have an event that maybe, you know, that you can get to that's even closer. And so this is another great event that we need to get the word out, get some people there who aren't going to other events that weekend, and let's support everybody. So if you're not going to an event on the weekend of May 15th through the 18th, you want to head over to this one, by all means, join the Facebook page. Maybe we'll have you back on in the future, but real quick, I know you have another event that you're excited about on June 12th. Let's give a little preview into that.
That's right. The event on June 12th is a tactical event. It's Vietnam. At the Tactical at Tigerland is the name of the Facebook page. That's where you'll find us. The Tigerland was the largest training area the Army had for infantry going to Vietnam. And this event takes place on part of the actual training ground. The foxholes are still there. They're filled in, but you know, you can still find the foxholes. You can still find spent blank cartridges.
Now let that sink in for a moment. Obviously, Vietnam happened over in Vietnam. For you Vietnam living historians, your Vietnam reenactors, this is the closest thing you're going to get to a Gettysburg for your event. You're actually going to be at the place where the people you're portraying actually trained. The foxholes that they dug, that they sat in, that they did their quote-unquote war games. This is probably, unless you are an international flyer and there's an event going on somewhere in Vietnam, I doubt it, just for the political side of it, this is your chance. I mean, for a Vietnam reenactor to have the ability to go to an event that takes place on partial property that the real guys trained on, this would be the equivalent of 101st guys going to, you know, heading up to Curry Hee and doing that march. And so this is a huge thing.
You're exactly right. I mean, this is, you're walking along and there's, on some of the hills, the rocks, they carved their names in them. And so you're seeing some of the guys' names that trained there. 1 million men went through there to go to Vietnam. And I mean, you find veterans that have been through it that'll come back and they'll come out and hang out with us for the weekend and tell stories about what it was like there. The heat, the bugs, the snakes, and it's all still there. You know, we've got it all. And being in June, it's pretty high temperatures.
So you're saying be prepared to embrace the suck?
Exactly. Embrace the suck, because it can. Several years ago, it was 112 the weekend we were there. And but this year it's going to be a little bit different than years past. We're doing a campaign march. We've got the actual route that the Army used. The area we're in is the northernmost area of Tigerland. So the Tigerland training area is actually about 20, 30 miles long. And you had different areas of it where they lived on Fort Polk at the North Fort, and they were trucked out to a location called Tiger Ridge. From Tiger Ridge, they walked into the area called the Horse's Head. That's where we're at, is the Horse's Head. And in this area, they had land nav courses. They had ambush trails. You know, so the spider holes that they used, they took 55-gallon drums and buried them in the ground and would crawl down in them and put cover over their head and then stand up and shoot. The spider holes are you know, in the hillsides, and we still use them. But I mean, you've got, you know, you are on as close as you're going to get to Vietnam. If you've ever watched the Vietnam in High Definition series that came on History Channel, they do a section about Tigerland and the hills. Once you get to our Facebook page, when you see the hills that are in our pictures, that's the hills on the video that they were attacking, where they're jumping out of the Deuce and a Half, running up the hill. It's the same place, and it almost looks the same now. It's
you know, I just had a thought. We're kind of talking about how this is going to be, you know, for a Vietnam reenactor, your Gettysburg. You know, it's also for you Vietnam reenactors. This is kind of like your the equivalent to the World War II reenactors who live in Europe, who have the distinct pleasure to interact with veterans who are coming back to that area for the first time or the second time since they were there originally. I'm sure there's going to be, Vietnam vets who come from other states who train there, who are now walking around and checking it out. No, you said it's a tactical event, right?
Right. It's a tactical event. We've had Vietnam vets that come out and went on patrol with us.
Yeah.
And, we had a guy that was a recon guy from the 173rd Airborne that he went out and humped it all day with the guys, wore his uniform from Vietnam and his gear. And we've had Vietnam vets that go out and teach.
That's got to be emotional for them too. It's just got to be surreal to be back to where you were when you're 18 before you went off overseas to fight in this war. You're back to where all your training, because so many of the, it's definitely the World War II, and I'm sure a lot of the Vietnam, a lot of those boot camp facilities are closed down because we had to build so many of them because of the amount of men we had to train. So, those wartime boot camps, a lot of them are long, most of them, I don't even want to say a lot, most of them are long gone. And so for these guys to have the ability to go back out in this hot, sweaty place that they were at when they were 17, 18, 19, and 20, and just relive that for the week, and that in itself's got to be very emotional and very cool to be around.
Oh, it is. I mean, and it's great to have them involved to the degree that we do. A good friend, John Eli, was with the 25th Infantry. He will play the part of battalion commander for the whole weekend. And Chuck Tony was in military intelligence in Vietnam, and he's on hand. And they're always giving tips. And it's great to have them there. And we've had other guest stars, so to speak, that's come in. Craig Jorgensen, actually in the unit that I reenact, and he came from Seattle, Washington, to spend a weekend with us, and which was really cool to have him out on patrol. And this year, I got off track, but this year we're doing something that's different for the Vietnam events. We're adding a campaign element into it, where we're going to do a 10-mile hike at night.
Nice.
We're taking one platoon out to live out and march into the site pre-dawn and then fight all day. And then where you'll have different locations. We have a lot of trucks. We have deuce and a halves. We've even had APCs there, 113. And so we're mobile, moving from one place to another, and we have our battlefield is 4 square miles.
Nice.
So we have a great, a solid road network. We have from a paved road, gravel road, down to a trail. And a lot of the trails were the trails that they were using. The route that we'll be taking on the march was the route that the Army used to move their men from the Tiger Ridge to the Horse's Head in the 1960s.
And for those listening right now who are excited because they just recently gotten a Vietnam impression, I actually know probably about five or six Florida guys who just did a Vietnam impression up in Georgia. I'm sorry, not Georgia. I've done so many events. Up at the Mount Dora event, we had our World War II bivouac down at the bottom of the hill. And at the top of the hill, they actually had a fire base dug, and they had a very cool Vietnam fire base, and we actually had a Huey flying people in and out. But I do know that there was 5 or 6 guys up there who are getting heavy into the Vietnam stuff. And I know for a fact 2 of them listen to this podcast. And so if you're listening to this podcast and you're doing Vietnam living history, where would they go to find more information and register for this event?
Go to Tactical at Tigerland on Facebook. It's the Tactical at Tigerland, the date, June 12th through 14th. That will get you into registration. Everything will be done. You can get the website, or you can get the email address for registration. Pre-registration, we love pre-registration. It helps us with logistics. It's $30, $40 at the gate, and we'll have vendors. Like I say, we're going to have different missions for different people, depending on how big we can expand. We might have an overnight position. We might send a squad out into an OPLP position to just sit and listen to the woods at night. We may have to have a unit to guard the base camp from ambush. We have a very active VC NVA element there, and they do a really good job keeping you on your toes.
And real quick, because I don't think we covered it for the History Trail on May 15th through the 18th. Is there registration for that event?
No, there's no the registration is a check-in procedure, but there's not a paid registration. No.
But you guys probably
it's free,
have,
but you do have to register.
Yeah, there's a register strictly for going back to logistics to know how many porta-johns are going to need, or how many, if we're feeding you, how much food we need to order. So obviously, if you're even remotely interested in that, go register. It's better to register ahead of time so they can be prepared for you, even if something comes up and you can't go. And once again, we're all living in this cancer world. Everything's getting canceled. Thank God, not cancer. Canceled. So there are small possibilities that, hopefully the time June rolls around, we're past all this stuff. And some of the doctors are saying, time June rolls around, we should be definitely on the downside of all this, and hopefully by May, so that the History Trail event still continues, which is even more important why today, you guys want to go out and join these Facebook groups so that you can get it on your calendar, plan to go, but also just keep it in the back of your mind. I'm sure I'll have to tell you all this. We all deal with it now. Your movies are getting canceled and everything else, but there's a small chance that, it may get canceled. But for me personally, I think it works better to assume it's not going to get canceled, prepare like you would for any other event, and if it gets canceled, so what? Now you have extra blanks and some food rations stored up in your garage, not a big deal. Right.
I mean, we would rather you do that because it's easy, we'd rather have too much than not enough.
Absolutely.
And at both events, I'll straighten this out. I mean, at the trail, we do want you to register so we know you're coming, but there's no fees for registration. Everything that I listed above is covered. So we just need some bodies there, and just need to know you're coming.
Once again, it's Darrell Price. Darrell, thank you so much for spending the time with me and my audience and getting word out. Not only getting word out about these events, but I really think you and I covered some important topics as far as where living history is now, and some things that people can do to help their group, help organizers better facilitate and make events run smoother. I think we put some good quality information out there. We got the word out about some great events coming up. And thank you so much for sharing your time, your knowledge, and your history with all of us. And I look forward to hopefully getting up to both those events. And maybe we'll bring the old mobile studio out and we'll get some episodes and hopefully interview some, some veterans. And it'd be great to actually get a Medal of Honor winner. Well, no, winner's kind of Medal of Honor recipient. On our show for the first time. That would be a great, thing to have in our archives. But thank you so much for all of everything you're doing, getting the word out there, and everything you're doing for the community. It's been a pleasure, and thanks so much.
Well, thank you for having me, and I look forward to seeing you there.
This has been a Digital 410 production.